Hi, my name is Pip. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing Dave Grohl's The Storyteller, which is a book that I actually listen to as an audiobook, frequently with biographies and things like that where the audiobook is narrated by the celebrity. I will generally go audiobook on that. I think that there is a lot you can get from the way someone reads their own personal story that you don't necessarily get from reading the written word. So this was definitely a good book to listen to as an audiobook. Other audiobooks that I've loved are like JVN's book, Miranda Hart's book, and recently I've been kind of going down the musical memoirs route. I've got stuck halfway through a Black Sabbath book, but to be fair, I also don't really know a lot about Black Sabbath, so there's not really a lot of emotional investment in it for me. I'm also trying to finish Dolly Parton's Songteller, which I am definitely losing steam with, but it's still interesting. I recently finished Will Smith's Will, and I've just started Lenny Kravitz's memoir as well. So listening to Dave's story is one that is kind of fitting with what I'm enjoying reading at the moment, but it's also one that as soon as I saw it pop up on Audible as a pre-order, I clicked that sucker because there is something about Dave Grohl that I just love, and I think it's how down to earth and how chill he is, and yet he's so cool and he's had such an amazing life, and yet he's also comes across a bit as a nerd. There's something really lovable about Dave Grohl, and that's coming from someone who hasn't spent a lot of time in his back catalog. Although after reading this book, I think I'm going to go down that rabbit hole. The way this memoir is written lends itself to making you feel like you're kind of hearing stories about a friend's really interesting life. He is extremely down to earth. It's very non-flowery with its descriptions. It's just kind of like, this is what happened. It was kind of cool. It was kind of funny. It was kind of scary. It was whatever. And you just kind of walk away feeling like Dave Grohl's the coolest goober you've ever known, except you don't actually know Dave Grohl, but you really feel like there is some sort of intimacy that's created by reading this memoir, which is not something that I feel is in a lot of memoirs. One of the things I didn't like about Will Smith's memoir was that I still felt like there was a very strong wall up between the reader and Will, which is natural and totally fine, and you're not going to ever get someone's entire life from a memoir, but there's something about the way Dave has put this together that really draws you in and makes you feel like you've been a part of his life all along. In 1991, when Nirvana released Nevermind, I was barely out of kindergarten, so I wasn't really their target market. Neither was my brother, who's 3 years older than me, but somehow I still knew about Nirvana. I still knew Smells Like Teen Spirit. I still knew when I heard about Foo Fighters that Dave Grohl was part of Nirvana. Somehow, Dave Grohl's life penetrated the mind of a little kid, and I always knew that he was around, and I always knew about his music, even though as like a 5 or 6 year old, his music would not have been my jam at the time. And that's pretty crazy when you think about it. That's some pretty powerful musical reach to be able to find little kids even across the other side of the world who somehow, by some obscure means, know about you and know when you're in a new band and know what band you were previously in. Somehow Dave's just the guy that everybody knows. I would usually loathe the part of a memoir that is about a childhood. I generally find they're boring, they're excessively long, they don't really get to the point or sort of say, hey, this is what happened and this is why it's relevant to my adult life story. So I often find them a bit of a slog because they're always the beginning of a memoir. And look, I just don't generally like the childhood section of memoirs, but I didn't mind Dave's. I I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was quite interesting. He was a mischievous little scamp who got into a lot of accidents, and it was really interesting hearing about how he kind of became a drummer and the path that he went down. And it not at all boring and not at all excessively long, which is usually my primary complaint. I knew that Dave had been in a band prior to Nirvana, but I had no idea that the amount of time he was in that band was basically as significant as the amount of time he was in Nirvana. The Scream section of Dave's book is fascinating. It's kind of like that part where you fall in love with rock and roll as a teenage kid and you try and get a break, and then the experience of being on the bus and the experience of trying to make it in the industry. It's written in such a fascinating and fun way. It's obviously been quite a journey throughout his career, but it's really interesting to see that kind of grassroots build up, because often you're kind of reading stories where they don't focus on that part as much and they go straight to the kind of insta fame part, and I don't find that as interesting as the build up and how we got here and the grind to get where he got musically. And the Scream story is just really interesting. If you're looking for a book by Dave that is basically about his Nirvana days, how he feels about Kurt and everything that happened, then this is not the book for you, because while he does talk about Nirvana and how he got into Nirvana and Kurt's demise, it's not a huge section of the book, and nor should it be. He gets asked about Nirvana probably in every single interview he's done, and it was 3 years of his life, and so much has happened on either side of that period, even though the music they created is just like, still makes you feel things now. And there are kids that are just finding Nirvana and finding that love for that music and the rawness of it now. But you can't expect this book to basically focus on Nirvana because so much other stuff has happened. So while, of course, he does talk about Nirvana and Kurt's death, it is mostly about kind of the insta fame they experienced and the darker side of that and the realities of dealing with that and how famous they became so quickly and how you kind of deal with that or not, as the case may be. The stories in this book that are about the Foo Fighters period of Dave's life and the fatherhood part of his life are absolutely hilarious. From stories about Dave and Foo Fighters drummer Taylor drunk driving scooters down the highway at the Gold Coast and Dave getting pinged and thrown in an Australian jail, to stories about how Dave flew halfway around the world and basically moved mountains to attend his daughter's daddy-daughter dance, and then came back with food poisoning and got straight on stage again in Australia. These are the stories we kind of love about Dave. They capture his Dave-ness, like when he broke his leg on stage and then continued the concert because he didn't want fans to have come for this concert and missed out. This book has really harnessed the Dave-ness, and I love these stories. They're so good, so amusing, and so much mischief often weaved in with the great stories about his having children and teaching them to drum and things like that, and the experience of fatherhood. It just makes for a really great read with a lot of variability in the story and the direction in which it goes. It's sort of not neatly categorized into this is what fatherhood has been like, this is what the Foo Fighters has been like, this is what Nirvana has been like. It does touch on all of those things, but it weaves them beautifully and kind of captures the way it happens in real life and captures the Dave-ness, which is what you really want from a Dave Grohl book anyway. Dave just comes across like a guy who's very in touch with reality and very aware of his blessings, but who fucking loves what he does. This makes for a fantastic book filled with amazing stories and cameos by other amazing artists, and stories that just kind of blow your mind or make you go, God, I wish I was there for that. That would have been phenomenal. This just creates a book that is full of a bunch of awesome stories about musical history, other musicians, and Dave's life. And it's a really great read. Basically, what I'm saying is that Dave Grohl is a phenomenal storyteller. If you love rock, if you love music, if you love Dave Grohl, there's something in this book for everyone. So do yourselves a favor and check this one out. I hope you've enjoyed this review and that you will check this book out. I would really strongly recommend listening to it as an audiobook, but don't miss it any way you can. Read it, listen to it, definitely check this one out. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and to subscribe to my channel. It really helps it grow and I would really, really appreciate it. Also, you can check me out on Instagram and Twitter at @PipCoombs, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.